Hey everybody, this is my 40-gallon Waterfall tank, and today we are going to be doing some maintenance on it. I obviously need to get in there and do a water change. You can see how tannin stained the water is. I've also got to change the filter. My regular viewers will probably notice how low the water flow is right now. That's just because the filter's all clogged up and I need to get that cleared out. I'm considering treating this tank for all the green cyanobacteria that's in there. It's not hurting anything, but just cleaning the tank up once in a while is not a bad idea. I am currently treating my 125-gallon native tank the same way, so I think I might just wait until I'm finished with that, and then we'll go ahead and start a new one. But I'll put a link down below to the ChemiClean. It's the product I use to clean the tanks up like that. It works really well. I've talked about it in plenty of other videos, so I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail about it now, but I will put a link down below to it. So I got to get the glass all wiped up. I get a lot of splashing that comes from this tank, and that makes that glass look awful. That's all on the outside, all that white crud you see, and that's like dried salts from when this tank was a brackish tank. It still has salts in it, and we can actually see evidence of that from all the salt formations that are accumulating at the end of this piece of wood. As the water and the salts wick their way up through the wood, the water evaporates away and it leaves the salt behind, and that's why that wood actually has that salt on there. If you tasted that, it would probably taste like nasty salt, but it would be very, very salty. So I'm not recommending tasting it. So anyway, we got to get the glass cleaned up because of that. We are also going to be adding a couple of new fish today. I'm trying to let them acclimate a little bit. They are currently in my water already. This is my groundwater though, so it's really cold. It's like, you know, basically groundwater temperature, 55, 57 degrees, whatever it is. And so with the water that shallow, I don't really have to worry about the gas exchange. That is shallow enough that they will get oxygen down at the bottom like that. It's only about an inch deep. And I'm also letting it slowly warm up, and being a small volume of water like that, it'll warm up fairly quickly, but not so quickly that it'll shock them. If I can do it over a 20-30 minute period, that's fine. So once I get done my water change and get some fresh water in here and a new filter on it, get some cooler water in here, we will go ahead and start thinking about getting those fish introduced into the tank. The real work today, however, is going to be more of an exercise in gardening than fish keeping. I've got to really give this thing a serious haircut today. I've got two issues. Issue number one is I have reintroduced my beloved aphids, and so I've got aphids all over everything, and they are everywhere. I mean, even all the way out on this very tip, I've got aphids out on this. So I got to spray for the aphids, but before I do that, I also have to groom all this stuff. It's out of control. It is so thick. If we walk around to the side here, you get a little bit of an idea of just how much of that is actually growing out and off of the tank. And the other side is even more striking. This side you at least can see sort of up into where the water's flowing in, and a little bit of the waterfall. This side is just bushy. Now this arrowhead plant, I could actually remove this, and all of this whole plant here, all the way over into this area, all of that would be removed. This begonia likewise is my Rex begonia. It's one of my Rex begonias, and that's just sitting in a little 1-gallon planter right there. It's an incredible amount of plant to be in that little tiny planter. And it's an amazing looking plant. I absolutely love it. But it's getting really big too, so I might trim that back. These are really easy to make cuttings from. If I just, you know, cut it here and here, I'll have two new plants getting started, and then it'll also force this one to sort of branch out and get a little bushier and that sort of thing. So I might do that today too. But the real thing is going to be getting in there and trimming out this arrowhead plant. This one here is actually growing out of the tank itself. I mean, that's just rooted into crud and soil, and, you know, I'm not really sure what those roots go into. And I'm really hoping that they don't go into the rubber coating, because if I tug and yank on that too much, they might be creating a watertight seal as they force their way through the rubber now, but if I'm going and yanking on that and twisting on it and stuff, that might actually tear open some gaps, and I might wind up having some leaks, if this thing is rooted into itself too aggressively. And, I always knew that was a possibility, and from day one, I've always said this whole entire structure is only sort of a temporary fun thing to do and mess around with. I figured I'd get a year or two out of it, and then I would move on and we'd play with something else, and I'd mix it up, So for now, we're moving into the time of year where I'm really not getting ready to start a huge project like this. I might do some inside stuff, but if I did something else like this, it would require an awful lot of, getting new plants and working outside to, shape the fiberglass and all that kind of stuff. Would be outdoor activities and all that. So this is definitely going to be more of a summertime activity and not an overwinter project. Anyway, I'm going to get started on it. I was intending this to be a before and after, and it's still going to be, but it's just going to be a lot more of a before than I expected. I did a little more of an intro than I was really anticipating there. But there's a lot to go over, and there's a lot to give you a look at to give you an idea of what your before looks like. So we'll step back, try to get the whole thing in one last time, and we will call that your before. And there's your after. So as promised, we did a huge haircut to the vegetation up top, but we're going to start with the tank, and then we'll work our way back up towards the top. So the water is crystal clear now. We've got all those tannins out of there, or the vast majority of them anyway. What I wound up doing was about, I want to say a 60% water change. It was a really big one. And as I refilled the tank, I started working on the plants. And as I started spraying on the plants, I realized I was basically spraying all of that soapy water into the tank as I was filling it, rather than the other way around. I usually spray the soapy water as I'm draining the tank, and that way I'm basically draining the soapy water out of the tank as it falls into the water. We will talk more about soapy water in just a minute. I'm not recommending people use soapy water in their fish tanks without a great deal of clarification, but I will get to that in just a moment. So anyway, I filled the tank back up. I sprayed all my plants down to kill off the aphids, and then I realized, well, I should probably do a water change now that I've just sprayed all that soapy water. So I did another probably 60% water change, and as the water was getting way down to almost done, I went ahead and sprayed for aphids a second time with even soapier water. And so hopefully, if I didn't knock them out completely, first by removing a lot of the plants that they were on, and secondly by that double whammy of spraying the soapy water, if I didn't kill them off completely, then I'll have knocked them back significantly, and it'll probably be several days before we start seeing any traces or signs of them again. I did not do anything in my little tank down here, although I really should have. Several days ago, I finally got sick of this tank getting clogged up every day and a half, and I pulled the little pre-filter sponge out of the water pump, and it has been running for about a week now, and you can actually see it's still got water flowing, not nearly as vigorously, so it is going to need a cleaning. But for now, that's running more vigorously than it would be if I kept that filter in there. After 12 hours, it wouldn't even be running that vigorously again. I don't know if it was just the bacteria that grew in that filter so fast, or if it was actually filtering stuff in and getting the filter clogged. Whatever the case, that sponge, that pre-filter sponge in there, made for almost a daily maintenance on this tank, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. The water is a little bit cloudier, so I'm assuming that definitely had an impact on the nitrogen cycle. As busy as that tank is, as much surface area as there is, pulling that pre-filter out of there probably did actually have a significant impact on the nitrogen cycle, but not enough that I'm concerned about it. Those fish are in no danger, and that tank will recover just fine, and everything will be just fine with my nitrogen cycle in there. Not worried about that at all. So the 2 Sculpins did get released. I didn't get that on video simply because it was just in the hustle and bustle of me doing stuff and draining the tank and refilling the tank, etc. And before I knew it, the fish were in there before I'd really given a whole lot of thought about whether I was going to get it on video or not. And I'm looking around. I don't see them anywhere, but I did see them a little while ago when I came in here to make sure that the all the debris and everything that got stirred up during my water change had settled down. You always got to wait a little while after you do a water change before you do a video of your tank. So I don't see the Sculpins in there anywhere at the moment. So we will move on, because that's pretty much the only thing I did in the tank other than change the filter out. That's not true, actually. When the tank was drained, I drained it all the way down. You can actually see the line on this rock where it looks lighter colored. That's because that was sticking out above the water and it got sprayed with hydrogen peroxide. This was also dark green with cyanobacteria. That was sprayed with hydrogen peroxide. Both times I drained the tank and exposed it, I sprayed that. And then I sprayed all of this with hydrogen peroxide all the way up to here. And there was a bunch of white stuff on there that had foamed up, violently. So that must have been some kind of this stuff must have been some kind of mold or fungus or something growing on there. But I killed a lot of that off. And then a lot of this was cyanobacteria. But that actually is also, all of this green stuff down here is also the Spirogyra hair algae. And it was curious because hair algae usually just grows and grows and becomes longer and hairier. And it has not been doing that in this tank. And as I stood here and watched, I realized that the guppies have been in there nipping and nibbling away, as well as the gourami. So apparently they eat hair algae. I never realized that guppies ate hair algae as much as they've been in there nibbling on it. So apparently they're helping me keep my Spirogyra filamentous algae under control. Now, when it came to getting in here and trimming everything out, I just got in there and trimmed everything out. That is the waste. And then I've got, let's see, we've got these that are probably just going to get tossed away because they are, have a lot of aphids and stuff on it. And that is the sweet potato vine. That is easy enough to propagate that I don't really have to worry about hanging on to the sweet potato vine. We also have all of that arrowhead plant, and that is packed in there. I had to wrap both hands around that, squeeze it together, and then jam it down into that plastic container to get it to go in it, like plants in a vase basically. So all the cut ends are now in the water, and I'll be able to make cuttings out of all of them. But this too has aphids on it, so cuttings or not, it's still going to have to get sprayed and treated. I'm just going to be able to get it up and out of the house. I cut 2 pieces off of my geranium here, so I've got 2 cuttings of geranium. I found my bromelade plant that I completely forgot. This little bromelade was back here. I was able to dig that out and find it. It's actually still green and alive. I couldn't believe that. Got in and did some massive chopping and cutting. You can see where I removed huge chunks of the arrowhead plant. That's what we were just looking at, that was stuffed into that plastic container. Likewise, if we come over here, we can see a lot of cut ends. And I removed a bunch of stuff that went up and over the top. I removed some stuff that went down and through, and opened that up enough that we can see the woodwork. We can actually see the roots of some stuff in there. I cut that's, you can see the reddish color right there. That's from that red sweet potato vine. So some of it still is in there. It might grow back, it might not, I don't know. But I've also now got water flowing over this side, which had stopped almost completely because of roots and stuff clogging it up. And we can also see the water flowing and trickling and dripping back there, which is what you're supposed to see when you're looking at a waterfall. And it also is now dripping and flowing all through here, which is the way it's supposed to work. The last thing I can think of is my Rex begonia here. I made 3 cuttings off of this. There was one down here that was all kind of spindly. I made a cutting off of that. That's actually sitting in my angelfish tank, just for the time being, just so it's in water. And then I also made a cutting here and here. So those 2 big top bushy parts came off, and they are in water in the other room, and they should probably root in fairly soon, and I'll have a couple of more really cool looking Rex begonias there, because I really like those a lot. So that is it. That is how I've spent my afternoon tinkering away on a rainy day. And I know it looks a little butchered and chopped. Probably looks about like what my own hair would look like if I did my own haircuts. But, well, I actually do my own haircuts, but I just clip my hair down to almost gone. And that makes it nice and easy. Can't quite do that with this. And as a result, it looks a bit butchered and chopped. But it will grow back in thick and lush, and within a few days you won't even be able to tell I did anything to it at all. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed all of that. I know that was a lot longer than I expected it to be, but you know, that's how it goes with me. If you're a regular viewer, you're probably used to that by now, and if you're a new viewer, you should get used to that because I'm very long-winded. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget, this one is my 40-gallon waterfall tank. Thanks again. I'll see you real soon in the next one. Oh, I forgot to talk about the soapy water. I will talk about that before I go because I think that's important if you've actually stuck around this long to listen to it. So soapy water will kill little insects like aphids, and all you have to do is literally put a little bit of soap, dish soap. I use Dawn. 4 or 5 drops, maybe a quarter of a teaspoon, half of a teaspoon into a little quart spray bottle, and spray everything down. You want to get every single insect wet if you can, and the soapy water actually breaks up the surface tension, and it allows the water to go into the little pores on the insects and so on and so forth, and they wind up suffocating and dying. It's important to note that when I spray it, I'm spraying it as much as I can onto the plants directly. I'm getting absolutely minimum dripping into the tank. I do my best, even though I am spraying, like literally I take the sprayer and I'm spraying right back in here and all over that, right into where the water's flowing, but I do it as fast as I can and get it over with, and then get that water back out of the tank and, you know, refresh the water. And I'm not 100% sure what causes fish to die when you get soap in the water, but I know fish are really sensitive to getting soap in the water. So I'm not recommending this necessarily unless you're really confident in what you're doing and you're willing to take some risks. Again, getting soap near your fish tank can be bad news, and I will look into that. I am going to research that if I think about it and find out why the soap does kill the fish, because knowing why it kills them, I can probably work around it a little more safely when I'm using it in the tank. But long story short, I did not get enough soap in the tank that, you know, where you can see the water splashing in. I wasn't even getting any type of like bubbling or sudsy type effect any more than was already there in the fish tank when I still had all the old water in there or whatever. It was getting a little bit more foamy than it is now. But otherwise, very little bit of that soapy water got in the tank. I also only used a little bit of soap in the water, and then I only used about a quarter of that spray bottle at a time. So not very much of that soap at all was getting in the water, but we were able to get all of the plant surfaces sprayed down, and I mean all of them. I soaked everything down until it was just dripping off of everything, and then right as it was sort of dripping done, the tank was finished draining, and I was able to sort of refill it with this nice new fresh water, and then that way we've got no soap, no nothing to worry about, and all of my fish are nice and fine and healthy. And I've done that many times. I've never had any issues. I've never lost any fish. So this is not something I did on a whim. This is something I've done many times in the past, although I gotta say the first time I did it was obviously experimental. Anyway, there you go. That's my story about my tank today. Once again, I'm going to say thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, and don't forget this is my waterfall tank. So thanks again. I'll see you real soon.